Why don't you just call it a love and hate relationship with Clubhouse?
I should have.
I think Clubhouse is a mirror to people in a way that it will give much back to you what you put into it in a weird way. Like I can imagine some toxic people come here and it just blows up in their face and and then you know what I mean. And then you get people like Chris who came on here and left all of us forever richer. And it's an amplifier. It's a mirror amplifier, I think, is what it is.
It's very addictive, I have to say. I haven't been on it for a while. I occasionally go on it in the evenings, UK time, and just the odd room or two for like 10, 15 minutes. But it's seriously addictive, right? Seriously addictive, in possibly in a good way. The community part of it is addictive. Clearly, this community, I listened to some of the replays, right? Actually, Cheryl, you've been doing some on your own. I don't know where Tyler was, but you've been
Yeah.
running
Yeah,
them. It kind
Tyler.
of,
Ellie,
I just stand in when Tyler is busy.
no, good job though. Like, no, I mean, and it's just
we,
community.
we we have a great time, Cal, when the women are all allowed to
Yeah,
speak.
yeah, yeah.
Very
When you
noisy
shut
though.
Tyler down.
Very
Yeah, yeah. No, I
noisy.
get that. I get that. But here's the other thing. There was I think in our chat at the back a while ago. I think Heyman said there's a in the U.S. there was a sitcom called Cheers. Right? It was a bar basically, and every day it was just filmed in this bar, and people would come in every day and just say hello and talk, and there's a bar owner, right? And then there
Good.
was, Woody. Remember that,
Yep.
Dr. Francine? Yeah,
Oh,
and
of course.
and then Norm, right? Norm would come
Yep.
in like the guy, and then there's the guy who used to be the postman, right? He used to come
Cliff.
in regularly. Yeah, and
Cliff
used to
Clavin.
always go on
Cliff
and on
Clavin.
about the. He used to always go on and on about the post office. That's like me going on and on about Best Buy, right? It's just, he's just like obsessed by where you're working or what you. But but that sitcom was popular because there was something about community. Everyone knew your name. You came in, even if you didn't come in every day, you came in after a while. And I've got to say, like Tyler and Cheryl, you guys like world class, like almost standard of like Walt Disneyland branding, right? Because the experience feels the same every day. It's not easy for a whole year, right? All these other rooms are coming and going. They don't know how to run a brand, right? And just how to moderate it, but keep it kind of going. And none of these other guys know how to do that. You saw that big room that was there for all the. There's no brand in it, right? There's no consistency of experience and consistent and it always feels like that. So kudos to the two of you. Kudos, totally.
I really believe that
Yeah,
that's
that's
true.
the one.
It's
That's the one. Quit playing
world
that.
class consistency.
That's the one. That's oh man, this takes me back.
Maybe Tyler and me have a similar common experience in Japan. So it's a Japan call.
Oh, you did it, man. You did. You always
我
do
哋
this
嗱
to me.
And the
The
funny thing is,
Japanese
I was
love it
there.
last.
I was
Yeah,
just
that
there
was
at that
just a
bar.
brilliant summary of the actual feeling in this room. Brilliant, sir.
I was just there when I was visiting colleges for my daughter and my son, Madison and Austin.
In Boston,
And
right? In
yeah,
Boston,
yeah,
yeah.
and I took my son there. And I was like, "Why am I taking my son to a bar?" And I said, "But there's memories here, Austin. There's like memories from when we grew up. Ted Danson. I can't remember all the names, but yeah, it was a great series, and
Yeah,
I
I
think
mean, it's
that's
kind of
well
similar.
said for this room."
Yeah, sorry, but one thing I gotta say about in the earlier days, right? Like probably like the first 3, 4, 5 weeks, maybe even a little bit more. Tyler used to play music that made me cry, right? And I don't know how he knew how to do that, but it just caught my mood. And do you remember that, Tyler? I used to say that
Very well, I
song
do.
just
Yeah, of
hit.
course.
Yeah, that song just hits me today. And he used to do that. He used to play these different. Yeah, no, it's really interesting. Very interesting community.
Yeah, but we were all crying then because we were in lockdown.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm feeling. I wish people who don't know Cheers did know it because it's you. You absolutely nailed it. I'm surprised it hasn't. Once you're aware of the similarity, it's impossible to forget it. And I'm surprised that no one's mentioned it because it's such a perfect comparison.
It's
But
community.
yeah, it, those who don't know, it was one of the longest standing successful TV series in American TV history. I think it went on for over a decade, didn't it?
Yes, it did.
They had a
Boston
spin-off with
Strong.
Frasier, one of the
Yeah.
characters there, one of the,
A great spin-off.
and he went off and created a spin-off based in Seattle, right? Another city. So yeah.
I mean, you have Seinfeld and Cheers are. It's hard to think of other TV series that are in that league. You know, like just definitive of American TV culture.
All in the family.
Yeah, like the pantheon of American TV. So, um, amazing to think what Cheers would be like if it was still running today, though. Like with all of the the country's so much more divided. Like in how they would address the social issues. It would be. I think.
Very, very good point,
Bar
Tyler.
fights. It
Very,
would be evenings full of bar fights.
And then everybody off to AA meetings.
Well, that's no different than to what happens in Boston now. It's par for the course, actually.
I'm pretty sure Cliff Clavin would come out of the closet at some point. So let's go. Let's go through the non-tech headlines really fast. Is there any particularly huge non-tech news going around that we must
well,
touch
there's
on?
a big strike in the UK. I'm sure you guys have rail strike. So everyone's going on about the rail strike in the UK.
Is that
It's kind of
affects
weird.
the tube? I guess
Sorry.
that affects the tube as well.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, actually, I don't know precisely, but yeah, it's all of the news. Everyone's talking about it. But what's interesting is that we've just had this massive practice of working at home, and everyone's got Plan B, right? Schools have Plan B. Hospitals maybe not, right? If you want to go to emergency to a hospital, but how many people use the train to get there? I don't know, to an emergency to a hospital, but everyone's got a Plan B, right? Doctors have, telephone consultations. Schools, I know that because my wife's a teacher. Schools have, if they needed it, they have, people can be at home. So in some ways, these guys are just, it's not going to work. People have Plan B, right? It's not the old days of Thatcher when people didn't have a Plan B, right? And so it's going to be an interesting fight between the unions and the kind of government, and as they try and stem this kind of real uprising, because you've now got, I think, airline workers and others that want to strike. So that's the UK.
So there's a big headline that Germany declares gas crisis as Russia cuts supplies to Europe. Gas is from now on in short supply in Germany. Economy Minister Robert Habeck told reporters at a press conference in Berlin, quote, even if you don't feel it yet, we are in gas crisis. Quote, Russia has weaponized energy. I just distinctly remember some very handsome, elderly, balding tech bro coming in and telling us that energy could be weaponized. So can food. And by the way, people are starting to say that Putin is weaponizing the food supply, by the way. And we have
And we
seen.
should give Tyler, and we should also give credit to Jorge, who said, like, Russia has resources that are tangible, and they can leverage that in this war. He's been screaming that to the hills for some time now.
But
True.
Tyler, I think to say Russia weaponized energy is not a fair statement because it's the Western world who actually sanctioned Russia and turned out to be this way, right? I mean, it didn't have to be this way.
That's 100% fair and accurate, Cheryl. It's true.
So it's self-inflicted.
Okay. I wanted to point out that
Well,
simultaneously,
Russia is blocking all the grains out of Ukraine, which is not, they are doing that. They are not only stealing the grain, but blocking it from leaving that port.
Yeah, well, they
well,
weaponize
I
that.
wanted to
That
I wanted to highlight that our friend Jane in Hong Kong was reporting that the power had been cut off, and water, I believe, for strangely simultaneously to her part of Hong Kong. And my friend Jason Calacanis is reporting on Twitter that his energy and I believe water was cut off. So just your daily reminder to start taking control of your water and food and energy. A kind of more positive news is there was some report of the world's most livable cities. And so I figured there's a golden opportunity to play our favorite show without Messi here, so we all have a fair chance of winning.
Messi is here on stage
Oh,
too.
Messi's here? Okay,
Just
well,
not feeling well. Yep.
so
No idea to open. It's no idea. She will win.
so
Congratulations, Messi. You won. It was
congratulations,
a
Messi.
walkover.
The question is,
Copenhagen.
She
I'm
care
going in
from
there.
the future.
I'm going in there
she's
first.
still having the COVID though.
No,
Messi,
Copen-
just
come on then.
congratulate her now.
okay, so what has been ranked as the most livable city in the world?
Copenhagen.
Stockholm.
Finland?
Vienna.
Norway.
Ooh, by the way,
Nor
that was a great guess, Johan. Copenhagen's number 2.
I
Norway.
said
Singapore.
Stockholm. Why
I said
should I say
Norway first.
Copenhagen?
Messi, I said Norway
Seriously?
first.
Wait.
For me,
Singapore is a
Japan is
city and a
livable.
country, right? So
No,
Singapore.
but
Singapore.
Yeah,
yes, but no,
I
Singapore
go
is
Singapore.
too hot and humid. Singapore, Japan is better, if you ask me.
Too much
Okay,
noise.
Messi, what's the answer?
You're biased.
No, I was saying Norway.
But I said it
You're
first, Messi. I'm not
only
giving it to you.
reason Norway doesn't score is because it's too expensive. I think.
Because of the salmon.
So I guess the point goes to Johan because he got number 2 with Copenhagen. Number 1 is Vienna, which, by the way, I recall that it was also ranked number 1 last year because I remember making jokes with the many of the Austrians who come visit me about how, or the people from Vienna, and they are aware that they won that last year. Every time I mention it,
Isn't Vienna expensive as well?
not compared to Oslo, no.
Is it for old people, really? Livable for old people?
Mm,
That's
you
quite
have a
insulting. I didn't mean that.
yeah,
It doesn't. It's never come up on the radar for young people. Like this is like the
right.
coolest city. Yeah.
All
Well, this is a
right.
great point. Let me go. Let me just quickly go through the
yeah,
top 10 because Cal sort of has a point that these clearly the people that are judging this are not under the age of 30. So number 10, we're going to do the top 10 in reverse order. So number 10 is, as Cheryl says, Osaka, Japan ranks number 10. And number 9 went to Amsterdam, number 8 to Toronto, number 7 to Frankfurt, number 6 to Geneva, number 5 to Vancouver, number 4 to Calgary, number 3 to Zurich, number 2 to Copenhagen, and number 1 to Vienna. And needless to say, the up and coming kids, as we call them affectionately, they would rank Berlin very, very high, for example. So I'm trying to think where else
Three
kids.
spots.
Hmm?
Three spots go to Canada. What is this
yeah,
based
and,
on? Just
and
economics.
yeah. What's the factors there?
The
Because
annual ranking of the
Hello,
world's most livable cities has just been released by the Economist Intelligence Unit, and 2022's Global Livability Index shows some marked differences from previous year. The EIU, which is a sister organization to The Economist, ranked 173 cities around the world on a variety of factors, including healthcare, crime rates, political stability, infrastructure, and access to green space. There you go.
because hello,
Infrastructure.
land have snow in the winter. It's very cold. It snows. I think it's hard, not as easy to live as a like a subtropical place.
But for
So none
me,
of
if
the
you ask
US
me
cities,
Kansai and Kanto, I prefer Tokyo than Osaka though, Tyler.
none of the US city made the list.
No.
No.
I beg to
Must be
differ
Really
on
because of the
insane to
Canadian.
add US in there.
Vancouver. Vancouver's got to be there, right?
Vancouver
It
is
is.
Number
Yeah,
five.
Vancouver
actually a
be number
city. I
five.
live. Yeah, it was rated like the most unaffordable place to live, I think, a couple of years
Well,
ago.
Vancouver. Oh yeah,
Yeah,
because of the actually a
Vancouver.
lot of money coming in from China, from a lot
exactly.
of the Chinese
Yeah,
uh,
sure.
rich billionaires are buying up Vancouver, so that's probably raising prices.
I
I think a
really
lot from
beg to
Hong Kong
differ.
too. A lot
Oh,
from Hong Kong, like
it's not
Pauline's
raising
family.
prices, Pauline. Sorry,
Oh no, I was gonna say I want to beg to differ on the infrastructure side of Canada. I mean, I live in Toronto, and in my opinion, it's probably one of the worst planned infrastructures because you can just tell the city did not plan to become popular at all. I just became a Canadian citizen not long ago, and last week, I had to rush get my passport. I don't know if you guys heard about the really bad passport situation in Canada. I waited for 6 hours in order to get my passport rushed.
In
And people
Quebec,
who
it's
actually mailed
36
it in,
hours.
In
oh,
Sweden, it's
see,
six
even
months.
worse. Yeah, so
I think
interesting.
Yeah, in
I,
other
I
places
I
it's longer still.
I lived most of my life in Canada, so I think one of those few things that you guys are mentioning is because of the big measures that the government is taking because of COVID. But Vancouver, especially, that I lived for years, I really do agree that's the best place to live in, except that you can't afford to buy a house.
Okay, so Dr. Fran has a bingo that she has in the back channel where she has guessed what people mention in every talk, like what the regulars mention, right? So Cheryl might mention Singapore, I might mention Best Buy, Nicholas might mention something about trust, right? And each time, and she has like this kind of, it's a fun thing. She had created this bingo card. But I'm going to use Best Buy here right now, so I'm doing my first thing on that. Every time we moved an employee from Minneapolis to Vancouver, rotated an employee to our Canadian business. At one point, I was running the Canadian business out of Vancouver, right? And every time we rotated an employee there, they never came back. They just never came back. We lost the employee to Vancouver, right? So to Messi's point, that place was something about that place that, especially when they started to have kids and their family, and it was just on the sea, and it's quite so multicultural with Asia kind of integrated in there. So yeah, we should have our own list, Tyler.
Hmm.
Yeah, I'm surprised too about the affordability because I mean, I guess the general living cost I found is much cheaper than the US, even just by the currency conversion. But when it comes to, I guess, home ownership, like Canada's characteristically just more expensive. It's one of those places where it builds equity really well, but the cap rates tend to not be very good in terms of like what you get for rent versus the price of the actual housing. So, generally to buy US is usually cheaper, but I guess it depends on what angle you take it from.
Yeah, because I was wondering why the cities from Texas, like Dallas and Austin, are not included because the quality of living is way higher here based on how big of a house you can afford and, the best schooling system. So I'm just wondering why these cities were not included.
because
Hey,
there weren't as multicultural, probably.
well,
Vancouver has,
Dallas has way more cultural, diversity than anywhere else I've traveled to, and the variation in food and like Chinatown, Asian, and so many different cultural. Sorry, my neighbor is flying his plane right now. Apologies.
Where do you
Hey,
live?
Aaron, this is Elena. You were asking about Austin, and there was just the list published. Austin is ranked as the second overpriced city in the United States. 67, I think it was 67%
is
above.
Phoenix the first?
You know what? I will try to remember it. Actually, I think it was Boise, Idaho. Believe it or not, um, it was
What?
Boise. Boise, Idaho was the most overpriced. And I have a list somewhere. And sorry, guys, I'm a little bit sick, but you asked about Austin. So I wanted to tell you the prices. have just skyrocketed since at least 2017. So it's basically pricing people out.
I was also including Dallas. I know Austin's situation is different since the Gigafactory and many other companies that are having their future plans of expansion over there. But Dallas is pretty good in terms of space and quality of life.
If I were to make a guess, I would hypothesize that it's lack of public transportation, because when you live in Dallas or Houston or any of these metropolitan areas, Austin is actually quite much better on this, but you cannot get around without a car. And based upon the definition of the index that Tyler gave, it seems like public transportation is an important part of it. Thank you.
There's I feel like there's so many reasons not to add Texas to that list. They have their own electric grid, it never works. There's a lot of crime, a lot of violence, and it's oversaturated. Every Californian, every person from Seattle is going there. Quality of life has decreased so much, particularly in Dallas. It's dense per quarter. I just would never imagine them on a list as the most um, anything to live in, honestly.
Okay,
Texas and
A
Florida
lot
are
of
two places I
Silicon
would never
Valley
I
has
add.
moved there.
I have to stick up for Texas. I live in Texas, so I am actually I have to stick up for Texas. It's much better than it looks. I think.
Oh yeah, me too. I have to because I travel to Florida and California and other states frequently, but there's a huge difference in terms of space, quality of life, in terms of diversity, availability of food, and many other things. It's just totally different. I don't know. You have to experience it
Oh my
personally
gosh,
to get.
Aram, you would
A lot of
choose
the
Texas food over
Silicon,
California?
Yes.
Wow. Oh wow.
a lot of the Silicon Valley companies also relocated to Texas. Maybe the reason for the high prices.
I think so too. They've really shifted the demographic a great deal over there. I'm hearing Texans complain a great deal about prices skyrocketing.
You're also going to get a shift in the demographic of the voting populace. So eventually, those taxes that everyone didn't like in California are going to make their way into Texas because all the people who champion for them are some of the folks moving out. So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Well, I don't know. I think Texas is going to turn blue if immigration, continues at this rate.
Yeah, that's my point. Yeah, exactly.
Well, we've been looking around, and I know it's all relative, but we've been across the U.S., which is not saying a lot for global perspective. But we've looked in all of the cheaper cities as we've looked at schools. As I mentioned before, I've got two that are going off to college, and Austin, I mean, and surrounding areas. The Carolinas are relatively lower, but I mean, all these states where people are fleeing to are through the roof. I mean, there are no good deals anymore. So it's a trade-off between now higher interest rates, everything has gone up, and specifically we've looked in Nashville, which historically has been cheap. So the appreciation for hard assets and homes and all that stuff, I mean, it is way higher. And I pay attention to real estate. It's way higher than the replacement cost of a house in California. Provided your cost basis is a decade ago, which we're lucky to have. But yeah, everything is just super super expensive. Add in the politics, that's another thing in transition. But just wanted to add that.
And this is based on if you lived and worked out of there, right? So it kind of makes me wonder that let's say you have the ability to work remote, what that list would be that if you can work remote, for example, like Thailand, what a list could be that a livable city from a foreign wage, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
How come nobody ever mentions Arizona? It's the fastest growing state in the country.
Hmm.
Yeah, I see a lot of people going to Arizona. Absolutely do. Retirees
Uh,
and full time, part time, full time professionals by demography, which I love to study because there's a lot of predictability in demography, not in a lot of other things. But yeah, I see a lot of people leaving California and going to Arizona.
Yeah, but by the Crowley formula, Arizona is going to be dry and very hot if
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
assuming the summer.
Yeah, come at this from a completely different angle. I come at this primarily
You
from
think it's not hot in Texas, Dr. Fran?
that, but by the way, it's relatively hot, and people think that it's hot in Thailand. But um, look, I mean, I don't think people are focusing on the water trends. I'm from Southern California. I've watched the area get drier and drier, and the droughts get more and more severe, and it's now getting particularly intense. And the climate exacerbation that's just about to kick off, it's very well understood. I don't know why the scientists aren't raising the alarms to the same degree they are. I mean, they talk about the CO2 parts per million in the atmosphere, and you can see that chart. And then what exactly that's going to do to some areas with regard to droughts, and some areas with regard to more, and some places are going to have actually more rain because the net is going to be pretty much a wash kind of. But some areas are going to get
It's a good pun. Great pun.
yeah, but there's going to be a significant drying of some areas, and I really feel like people should think a little more long term about living in places that are going to become um, water stressed to the degree that they border on being uninhabitable. So it's quite
Well,
worrisome.
well,
I,
in theory, we're gonna have a desalinization plant. That's
I,
what's
I
in the work.
honestly, I pray that we figure out how to do desalinization in a scalable way. It works fine in limited capacities in places like Israel, which are relatively small with incredibly cheap energy in the Middle East. But in other parts of the world where energy is much more expensive with significantly bigger populations, we're going to need something like, cold fusion, or, free, some other massive energy breakthrough to really enable.
What about solar?
Yeah,
What about
you're going to
solar?
need, as somebody who runs a resort on solar, like 22 houses on solar exclusively, solar works fantastic for uh, low wattage use cases, like TVs. TVs are surprisingly low wattage, like 100 watt, 500. I mean, as soon as you get over 1 kilowatt per hour, like air condition, anything that does heating or cooling requires insane amount of energy. And so solar doesn't really suffice in all use cases. It works pretty well for a standard house, but when you get into kind of industrial use cases that involve either heating or cooling, it just isn't sufficient for the time being. But um, the quick short answer is it would take an incredible amount of solar to transfer, to power desalination. It's so energy intensive.
I
Well,
mean,
to your
there
original
is a good example to look at how Cape Town did really struggle trying to do the desalination. I think last year or something like that, there was a really severe shortage of water, and it wasn't scalable or feasible or any functional way. So that's an example that we could look for.
I
look
think to your
from.
original question, Tyler, it seems like every issue, whether it's COVID, whether it's getting to the root cause analysis of why people aren't reacting to the global conditions, is everything is politicized. Everything becomes a political football. And I think when things get that, and to Cal's earlier point, that's what I love about this room, because I try to be not political in my views around technology and other things. And I think once you politicize something, you put it on absolute, absolutes one side or the other. It becomes binary, and then whichever side it falls on, everybody fights the arguments against, and that kicks the can on addressing the real issue. Number one. Number two, I think, regardless of party, regardless of organization, once you say something like that, you create a Chicken Little effect, and then you have people just I think they want to slow roll the information, keep it present, but not say, the sky is falling because people just go into panic mode. I don't know. Those are 2 points that when I think about the question that you raised, it follows suit with many other topics that lack clarity to, to government, to world order, to people, and we just sit around and we're confused because there's so much data that is at cross purposes with one another, and we just walk around in a fog.
Could I just add two quick points? One, I think doing linear projections of the dry parts of the world are going to get drier and the wet parts are going to get wetter has proven to be a reliable short-term trend predictor. I have no confidence that with the kind of abrupt changes in climate that are occurring, that extrapolating those trends indefinitely or even for more than a decade is going to prove to be reliable. I think we could see torrential rainfall in the uh, dry Southwest in 10 to 20 years that would transform some rich soil areas into very fertile agricultural areas that just haven't seen water in thousands or tens of thousands of years. So the first point is I think extrapolating current trends is a dangerous proposition. The second thing is I just sent Cheryl in the back channel an article out of Nature from a couple months ago modeling what's going to be happening with zoonoses, the viruses that transfer from one species to another as a consequence of climate change. It's a really authoritative review that looks at how many viruses in how many species are likely to cross species ultimately into humans and where the hotbeds of those viral transmissions are likely to occur, notably, sorry, Tyler, Southeast Asia, um, and the impact that that's going to have on human populations. And the irony is that one of the predictions they make is that if we slow down climate change, it could actually worsen the trend already underway because it would allow for more extinction of more species of animals um, that could serve as ecological buffers to these zoonoses. So the compound knock-on effects are so unpredictable. I mean, the black swans in the next couple of decades, if we don't solve carbon capture, if we don't solve climate change dramatically soon, will have consequences that don't follow any existing linear model. So I'd be really careful extrapolating that the dry areas are going to get drier indefinitely, the wet areas are going to get wetter indefinitely, and that the biologic consequences won't actually equal or dwarf the
Mm.
physical consequences of climate change.
Yeah, we cannot determine
Sorry,
linearly.
John, I can't open the link that you sent me. Can you resend again? It's actually
I
a Zoom link that you sent me.
I no, I sent another one. Sorry, that was a
Oh,
mistake.
okay.
Um, yeah, go.
Okay, I'll check again.
You should have the subsequent one.
One thing is clear that there is a shift in extreme environmental, uh, you know, there are changes that are extreme in different directions. It doesn't have to follow the linear progression, but this is safe to say that the environment is shifting dramatically in extreme situations. And the second point about the zoonosis, the WHO is convening a meeting about monkeypox, whether to determine it as a global emergency or not. So that also tie into the environmental extreme situations and changes resulting in emergence of certain viral and other epidemics. That is completely tied in with the extreme of environment.
We had an amazing time in a newsroom the other morning when Eli came in and in a deadpan scientific voice read out the monkeypox guidelines from the CDC, particularly when it comes to sexual activity guidelines for monkeypox. How can a person lower their risk during sex? I'll read them out if you like, but they're they're funny, but they're not PG. So if you want to laugh, I'll read them out. I'll try and do the deadpan science voice, but if you don't, then I'll just send you a link.
Go for it.
We're going to have to have the we're going to have our handsome leader confirm, because they're pretty clear and direct. But this is from the CDC, so let me give you the link first, just to prove that I'm not messing with you. I'll back channel that straight to Cheryl now.
I think people
Uh,
can read. There's no need to read it out. In my
Ben, can you give a summary? I think it'll be very funny.
no, I can't do a summary. You've got to read it or not. So if we read it, it's going to
Yeah,
upset
read
Aram.
it.
Okay,
Go for it. I
not the
love
whole
your
thing,
accent.
not the
Yeah,
whole thing, but here are the
we
bullet
enjoy
points.
the read.
Sorry, Aram. Um, So the bullet points, this is under the how can a person lower their risk during sex. I've sent you the link. Cheryl, this is on the CDC
Yep, I
website.
just pin it.
Have virtual sex with no in-person contact.
But your
The
reality.
Done,
wife's in my
done,
wife's in my
done.
wife's in the background. So point two: masturbate together at a distance of at least 6 feet, without touching each other and without touching any rash or sores. Consider having sex with your clothes on, covering areas where a rash or sores are present, reducing as much skin-to-skin contact as possible. Avoid kissing. Remember to wash your hands, fetish gear, sex toys, and any fabrics, bedding, towels, clothing after having sex, and limit your number of partners to avoid opportunities for the monkeypox to spread. So there you go. That is the CDC guidelines, just to keep us all safe. Have fun
You
out
know,
there.
Ben,
Oh, and wear a
the
mask.
one that, yeah, they don't mention anything about wearing condoms and wearing a mask. It's so ironic.
Yeah, the
It,
Well,
thing
did
here
you
with
not
with
see?
with not with missing the condom part, because they are actually found the virus inside of semen now. So yeah, and everybody brought that up from the beginning. But yeah, but how about that? Why don't you take? No, no, we can't. Okay.
the, the bit I can't
And
shake off, to excuse the pun, is the 6 feet. Somebody's been doing ballistic calculations, and I don't know what they're doing in the CDC, but someone's been literally doing artillery style calculations on. Anyway, I won't say anymore.
Oh, I can't stand you.
I think it's
Well,
a
at least they're
Tyler, are you there? I have a question.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, you know what? I when I see the maps on TV with the national with the international temperatures and stuff, it's always like 37, 38 in Thailand. So I'm thinking that where you are, it's not the same because they're probably
It,
given the temperature in the
I guess
capital.
not. Yeah, it's really bizarre. I mean, where I am, it's precisely 28 degree. It ranges from 26 to 30 degrees day, night, year round. Which actually might sound lovely, but over time it becomes it almost messes with your head when the weather's that consistent. So, um, um, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what to say. By the way, for some reason in our part of the world, when you cut down all of the trees and you build buildings or walls, it gets very warm. It gets very uncomfortably warm very quickly, and you need air conditioners and all that. If you go into a jungle area and it's covered, you're under trees. Generally, it's incredibly enjoyable. You don't need air conditioning at all. And if you build a house inside of the jungle with kind of large open windows, you don't need air conditioning at all, ever, at all. Really, we don't. My entire resort has no air conditioning. We have hundreds of guests, every month, and no one has ever asked for an air conditioner. So ever year round. So that's to me the best way that I can describe what the weather's like. And these are people who are not used to Thai weather, who just arrived from Scandinavia, who are used to very cool climates. So once you live there and you adjust to the weather, you really don't want an air conditioner. So I don't know of
I
a
think
better way
there's
to
a
describe the weather.
there's two things in Southeast Asia. Actually, it's not just a heat, because if it's a heat from the sun, you can. But as long as you have shade, you won't feel it. The second thing is actually the humidity. For places with high humidity, that's when you really need the air conditioning, because if it's too humid, you really don't feel comfortable. But if it's not humid at all, like if there's the temperature is high and not humid, it is actually okay. It's bearable.
Yeah,
Humidity that kills me in Singapore, to be honest.
yeah, there's a term called the perceived temperature. So it's not only uh, the temperature from the climate. You have all this environment, and just like Cheryl said, the humidity and even the wind. Because Tyler, you're on a small island, so you're near the beach, and the wind is there to help to reduce the
The
feelings.
land
Well,
breeze and the sea breeze.
a
Well,
room
there's a
fan is
there's
a.
a
There is
Sorry,
a
go ahead.
study directly connecting the amount of concrete on the ground with the degrees of elevation in temperature. So, laying down concrete covering the surface of the ground plays a huge role in raising the temperature of any area. That was a translation of like long-term study, and absence of concrete really helps keeping the temperature down as well. So we really need to figure out how to not lay down concrete everywhere, and these roads and all the industrial related city structures play a huge role in elevating the temperature of Earth
But
overall.
And
Aaron,
by many
oh, go ahead,
estimates,
John.
the production and use of concrete contributes 7% of the greenhouse gases.
Yes, 7 to 15%, I think.
in
Paradoxically,
Canada, there's actually a term known as the humidex, and it's a humidity index that helps you kind of measure what the relative heat or what it might feel like, and that has to do with the dew point of water vapor. So there's a certain point at which, if the air is too saturated with water, your body is unable to perspire or let off that heat by sweating, and therefore you feel hotter than actually the thermometer says. So it's an interesting measure, and only here in Canada do they start using it in 1965. But here, with the given weather swings, we get hotter than Dubai and colder than Siberia. So we really needed an interesting measure.
well, it's this thing that trees do these wonderful service risks. The thing you're talking about, Io, there is obviously latent heat, right? It's the amount of energy you need to change state, and as soon as you can't sweat, you can't do that change for. You can't make that state change, right? So the liquid at the surface of your skin can't become water vapor, and that's responsible for taking a huge amount of heat energy away. It's the same reason why it is cold under trees, because they're doing us a great service. They're sucking up water underground, blocking the direct sunlight with these wonderful green leaves, and then in the process, they're transpiring water away that they've sucked up from underground and evaporating it. And then in that process of evaporation, you lose loads of heat energy in the air, and you moderate the humidity to some extent. So they are doing us, trees are doing us a serious, serious service. Interestingly, concrete outside on the pavement, really bad, gets real hot, no good. But inside, a bit of concrete inside your house can really moderate the temperature. Concrete, water, anything dense and heavy, because it can absorb heat when it's too hot and release it during the night. So, yeah, horses for courses, although I hate the look of bare concrete, but that's a talk for another day.
Okay, let's get into the top tech headlines for today. So we need the air horn. There it is. So, happy Thursday, June 23rd. Here's the top tech headlines of today. Number one from Reuters, and everybody else for that matter. Amazon is working on letting Alexa mimic any voice that you choose after hearing less than 1 minute of that person's voice or pre-recorded audio of that person's voice
That
as
is
a
so awesome.
as a way to quote unquote make the memories last of deceased family members.
You want to
Now,
talk to Grandma? Here, let the computer listen to Grandma for a minute. Oh, look, we rebooted Grandma.
That's a
so
Black Mirror episode right there.
well, even better because if I think most people in the room are familiar with Dolly 2, which enables you to suggest a string of text, and you can create. It will create instantly very incredibly impressive imagery based on your text input. For example, CCTV camera footage of Darth Vader riding a unicycle, and it will create incredibly, shockingly good images that look like CCTV camera footage of Darth Vader riding a unicycle and anything else you can possibly imagine. And I've seen just mind-blowingly, stunningly beautiful examples of Nike shoes designed by Frank Gehry, a famous architect, or Frida Kahlo, the painter, or you pick any artist and Nike shoe, and it will design it in an incredibly convincing, shockingly, stunningly brilliant way. So, what's amazing about that is also illustrates the point that Dolly 2 understands both the object and the subject of that input of text. It understands what Darth Vader is and what a unicycle is and what CCTV camera footage is to generate all of that. So if it understands Darth Vader and a unicycle, it also understands it in 3 dimensions generally. And so you can program a metaverse rather than programming 2D images. It could just as easily program metaverse experiences. So you could tell Dolly 2 to create a metaverse experience filled with, 6-inch high Donald Trumps, jumping on pogo sticks, etc. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Did we not cover a headline a week ago that one of the team members at Google who works on Google's Google's chat bot was implicating that it potentially had become sentient, meaning alive, aware, right?
Yep, yep, yep.
And
And if you
now,
read the transcript of that, it's pretty creepy.
yes, the transcript is pretty creepy. I have read it. Now, here's my point. That is a separate technology. So there's 3 technologies here. There's Dolly 2, where you could create visually the metaverse based on input, very simple input of your choice. Then you have uh, the Google chatbot, which is approaching sentient-like behaviors, according to Google's own team members. And then you have another technology, which is this one, which, and by the way, Spotify just acquired a company last week from the UK. Amazon obviously has their own version of this, where there's multiple labs that have this now, where you give it 1 minute of audio of anybody's voice. It takes a voice print, and it can, from that moment forward, take any text input and do it in that person's voice. So you could take an audio recording of your grandma or Snoop Dogg and then give it the works of Shakespeare, and you could now have every Shakespeare play read to you by Snoop Dogg or your grandma or anybody else. Now, why is that important? Because going back to that metaverse example of a million 6-inch high Donald Trumps jumping around on pogo sticks in the metaverse, you could now give it the Google bot. You can assign a Google bot to each of those miniature Donald Trumps jumping around on pogo sticks and give it near sentient like ability to conversate in text. And now you could assign the voice of any person who ever lived in history to that sentient bot. So you combine those 3 technologies, the Dolly, the Google sentient bot, and whatever this is called, the voice printing, and now you can have any character in the metaverse with a sentient like bot and any voice you can imagine. And that's going to
And I
create,
think,
yeah, go ahead.
yeah, I think, and I brought this up several times in prior discussions. I think this is going to constrain what types of IP can be captured in NFTs. Because if you can modify within the bounds of the artist or the event or whatever ad infinitum, and yet be faithful to the voice, the personality, the coloration, the style, whatever. Yeah, I just honestly, I think there are things like NFL or sports prime events that are one-time events that everybody knows they're valid or not. I think outside of things that are uh, captures of reality are going to be very threatened as intellectual property in the form of NFTs, because you can construct anything, and even an expert wouldn't be able to tell you whether it was the original artist or a machine that created that likeness of the original.
Yeah, that's a great point, actually. So I'd be curious to see if this Alexa voice print has a sort of watermark. I know a few years ago, Adobe showed this off, and they chose not to release it because they were not confident in their watermarking capabilities. So this is an interesting example of, I think, this tech going to the next level. As a reference for everyone else here, there's a video called "AI Made This," and it kind of talks about or shows what Tyler's been talking about, connecting the metaverse with these tools and the kind of stuff that artists create that are 3D now. And it's almost like this trippy fractal. Closest thing that I can say, it's like an acid trip, except you're a little bit more sober. So I'll put the video in the chat here. Folks should check it out. It's definitely amazing.
I have a more fundamental question. Just it may sound a little basic, but you know, at the moment, you can actually your banks kind of ask you. I'm talking about normal banks. I'm not talking about um, the fintech stuff and everything. Just a normal bank. They have a telephone, a voice recognition system, right? So like, and they record a voice or they make you say a couple of things, and then apparently that's supposed to be really secure. Like how? Like is that like somebody help me with that? Because I is that
Yeah,
going to be
that's why
secure? Is that
that's
where's the
why whenever
watermark in that?
whenever I get a call from an unknown number from an unknown person, my only response is low, 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 until I know who they are, because a lot of those robocalls you're getting are recording your voice for exactly that purpose.
Oh, so that it's actually not secure. Then how come the biggest banks like and I'm sure there are a lot of people cynical about the existing banks, so they'll be able to tell me here. Like, so how come like I don't know. Let's take NatWest in the UK, or every single bank, US bank in the US. All of them are offering this, right? But I'm not seeing a lot of complaints. Like you'd see like a lot of complaints, wouldn't you? Like, oh, I've just been hacked because of my voice. But I'm not seeing a lot of that. Right?
There's permissions in the app, for example, with the bank app. Just by having the app installed on your phone, there's something in the EULA that says that they can access the GPS and camera at any time. So if you're on the phone with them, they have the right to ping your phone and say, actually, we can confirm that we are talking to you. So there's many mechanisms like that, early warning AI detection systems that the bank implements, not just the voice stuff, but in tandem with other things. And one of those being these apps
So the
with all
normal
these
phone, don't
privacy
use it
issues.
then. That's what I'm hearing Jonathan say, John saying down
I,
there,
w-
right?
I wouldn't
Normal,
use it. I don't use the service. I wouldn't use that service.
yeah, got it.
Unless it's one of many multi-factor confirmations.
Yeah,
Being
got
the happy
Yeah,
chappy now.
yeah, they will verify you with other information, not only by the voice.
it. No,
Mm.
it's pretty. You should see, BB. This is they say basically
Oh,
once they get
I'm not
the
sure. Yeah, maybe
sorry,
yours is that, but
I'm talking
here
about
we have
big banks. They're
Citibank.
literally instead of the normal PIN, right? Instead of the normal PIN, they validate with voice, and then
Yeah, yeah.
after that,
They
you
have
can
a
talk
voice
to them
print.
like about anything.
Yes, but here we have Citibank offer this voice print verification as well. But after that, we will continue with at least two other questions you have previously input in your information. So, and you can choose not to use voice print as the verification. So I'm not sure if it's forced in your area or not. But
Okay.
here we can
Sorry,
disable.
I'll pull out there, but I just think that
Yeah,
sometimes some of the most basic things that are happening out there we don't question, and this particular one I was just wondering. But anyway, we'll move forward. I'm sure they do other validation, but I'm not using it, so you don't have to
I
record
think,
my voice.
yeah, Cal, we can open this can of worms a bit. The thing is here that when Tyler described the function of the new speech bot, my first thought about, oh God, this will make phishing or phreaking or phone phishing even more intense. Because now you actually can have the voice, you can actually snatch the voice of the CTO or CFO or CAO of a company from a meeting, a draft he done for a TED talk or similar keynote. Use that, implement it, and have that voice call to a clerk and say, "Hi, it's Elon Musk. I need to have $500 million transferred to this account. Could you please do that?" With Elon Musk's voice. Congratulations, we have just short circuited another step of this with really validating who you are in phishing.
That's actually true. Like Elon Musk did at one point have a tool and die manufacturer that went bankrupt, and he made one phone call and transferred a bunch of funds to help that business start up. He was like, "How much do you need? Okay, let's get this done." And by the afternoon, they were back up and running. So for somebody like Elon Musk, or even somebody like Lex Friedman, for who there is a lot of audio content, this would be a nightmare, definitely.
Yeah, the thing is that I worked as an online travel agent, and we had a lot of attempts to actually falsify, both by phishing emails and also by calls to clerks where they pretended to be our CIO and CFO, finance officer, and getting people to do transactions for them. But they always had a bad accent, or did get caught in other ways. But this will turn the tables totally. I have actually no idea how to defend against fingerprinting is one thing, yeah, and having good routines at your company to handle money transfers is another one. But yeah, it will, if they are persuasive and they are good. They probably can go around it. Yeah, I know we have procedures for this, but we need to have this done now. I can
The
already
biggest
hear it.
the biggest hacks in crypto have been social exploits of what's known as phone porting, where someone takes over your account and then starts changing all the passwords and works on hacking your wallets, etc. So social exploits are the worst. Deep fakes are going to be pervasive, and there's only one solution, and that's self-sovereign identity. And I don't know how long I'm going to have to say it for, but that is the answer.
I would say the future of retinal scan, I think, is looking bright because we have a very unique
Super
ret.
glitchy.
Sorry, you want to finish? Let me. Who was that?
I just wanted to say it's super glitchy. All the retinal scans and all of the other trials have not been very successful. Plus, you're also making an extreme vector for if the wrong government gets in charge, there's no way you can change out your eyes. So I would urge anyone to not be doing voice, don't do face, don't do any of those. Certainly don't do retinal scans. You are potentially going to get trapped in a system if it goes bad against you. So I just wanted to jump in there. You carry on, sorry.
Thank you for allowing me to finish my thought, Nicholas. That's what I was going to say. That the future, if these deep fake facial recognition techniques and your voice is being kind of recreated, and then you're pushed into this, another index of recognition, which is retinal scan, that's not going to leave you with any kind of privacy. So be very mindful and careful of that. Another aspect. Imagine, which is like a psychological aspect, imagine grieving the loss of your loved one, like my dad. It was very hard for me to delete his voice messages. I kept on listening to them, and that kind of prolonged my suffering. So I'm also concerned about how our memory is built. We tend to forget painful things, loss of loved ones, because gradually, the memory fades away and you learn to live without their sound or voice, without their face that you look at. So looking at the pictures is one thing, but listening to their voice evokes like another emotional reaction. And now with this technology of emulating, recreating voice of your grandmother, and you're listening to it over and over again, psychologically, how long is going to take somebody to get over the fact that she is not here anymore? So this is another point of concern for me, because as the technology advances, the human psychology is not keeping up with that. We are not made for this. We are supposed to forget. And memory loss is there for this reason, so we can, move on. So this kind of creation of a fake virtual grandma sound and face is gonna create some issues.
Okay. There's a bunch of tweets, obviously, about this headline, and no doubt people will debate it. I want to read just a little bit of the Reuters version of it. It said, let's see here. The online retailer is developing a system to let Alexa mimic any voice after hearing less than a minute of audio, said Amazon senior vice president at a conference the company held in Las Vegas on Wednesday. The goal is to make the memories last after so many of us have lost someone we love during the pandemic. Amazon declined to share when it would roll out such a feature. The work wades into an area of technology that has garnered close scrutiny for potential benefits and abuses. For example, Microsoft recently restricted which businesses could use its software to parrot voices. The goal is to help people with speech impairments and other problems, but some worry it could also be used to propagate political deepfakes, as John mentioned.
Really begs the question of whether there's going to be a level of consent required. Because even for deepfakes, the use of faces, it's kind of like you think about the creepy uses of it because they're applying it in the positive light. But I don't know, what if there's like a stalker or something like that who just, yeah, there's an idea of consent. So I wonder if that's going to be a component.
So during this demonstration at this event, it says Amazon shared its vision for companionship with Alexa at the conference. In a video segment, it portrayed a child who asked Alexa, "Can Grandma finish reading me The Wizard of Oz?" A moment later, Alexa affirmed the command and changed her voice. She spoke soothingly, less robotically, ostensibly sounding like the child's grandmother in real life. And by the way, there it is right there. I think they kind of teased the example that, and now I know why Amazon announced this. I was scratching my head, why is Amazon preemptively announcing something that doesn't exist yet, right? Because normally you announce things that, you have, and why announce something that you don't have yet? These things are done with incredible strategy and teams of people who have several meetings about when to make announcements of this. So, yesterday, well, this in recent days, in the past 3 days, let's say, this week, Spotify announced that they acquired a UK company who does the same type of functionality, which happens to be the team who worked on the new Top Gun movie to bring a voice to Val Kilmer's character Iceman, as Val Kilmer no longer has a voice, and so they had to use a voice print of his previous audio recordings and put in the script, and then have the technology speak on his behalf, for lack of a better word. Now, something that no journalist picked up on, but I was very quick to mention is, oh boy, I happen to know that Spotify is incredibly excited about audiobooks as an entire new category of content, a huge category of content for Spotify premium users, so that you could have every audiobook ever made. That would be a tremendous value to Spotify's membership. No doubt Amazon took note of Spotify's acquisition, and now you know why Amazon is. But by the way, Spotify didn't mention that this technology is going to be used to create every audiobook ever imaginable, because obviously every book is written in text. Currently, you have to hire humans to read those things. That's kind of a bottleneck for Spotify. Well, they just solved that, because now you can input the text into this bot, and you can pick any voice you want. Like, you could have Donald Trump read you Shakespeare, or Snoop Dogg read you Dr. Seuss. So, in this example that they gave, they had Grandma read, what was the book? The Wizard of Oz, implying that Grandma can read any book, and not just Grandma, anyone can read any book. But they're doing it in such a subtle way, but it's a huge implication, because Amazon can't risk you leaving your Amazon Prime membership to get a Spotify Premium membership, because both of them are very soon going to have every book ever written available to be read by any voice ever recorded. And I think this is essentially the winner of that is authors, in a sense. Hopefully authors will be compensated now. People will be consuming more books now that they'll be able to consume them in any voice that they want. And That's a whole lot of new content to be come in through our earphones.
It's one of
So,
the
so,
things I
so there's
actually look
Adam
forward to.
Smith I can listen to with a Scottish accent.
They have Adam Smith's Wealth of Nations on audiobook already, but it doesn't have a Scottish
Yeah,
accent.
yeah, yeah.
But I do think it is valuable. I think Amazon will do it through Audible, of course, rather than being Amazon Prime.
Yeah,
But
yes.
it is one of the most useful facilities that you could possibly offer. And I think we talked about it a few months back, where we said, why the heck aren't they taking every book and turning it into an audiobook automatically? But I wonder if they're that good at reading with punctuation and everything. I suspect they are at this point.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't know about this product, but the text to voice is staggering because I actually have both in the platform I'm working with right now, both voice to text and text to voice, and yeah, we
I think, Johan, I think you're breaking out. You're in the matrix.
Yeah, we lost you, Johan. It's okay. We'll come back. Number 2 from the Wall Street Journal. Instagram begins testing tools to verify ages. Oh boy. Starting with 17 or under, using either Yoti's facial analysis tech, photo IDs, or adults vouching for users. Meta's new policy will make it tougher for teens to update to adult accounts, but they can still lie about their age in the first place. Okay. And the background on this is, of course, to kind of avoid any legal responsibility because of the new rulings that all the platforms, Instagram and the like, TikTok, etc., can now be sued for addicting teens. And so they want to make sure they know who is a teen and who isn't a teen on their platforms.
This
And
this is a direct response to the whistleblower who was on that team who made it clear that they really didn't care too much
yep,
about this.
yep. Instagram will let age, but not to keep children off. Yep. Yeah, I love the fact that the Wall Street Journal and the Washington Post are covering the story. That tells you everything you need to know that they don't see this as a positive, and or they can paint it in a negative light. And indeed, the Washington Post version of the headline says, "Instagram rolls out age verification, but not to keep children off the app." Right, and nor should they really. Just um, so
Meta really needs to buy their own newspaper like Jeff Bezos, and he can get a mouthpiece in the traditional media.
Okay, so the third story of today is that Coinbase plans to shut down its standalone trader-focused pro service by the end of this year and replace it with advanced trade across its main app and website. So they're kind of consolidating the two products essentially.
Who's that?
Coinbase. There's currently a standalone pro version, and they're going to bring that functionality into the main app but call it advanced trade. But
That must mean they see changes in the way people are going to uh, buy and sell crypto after this latest downturn. I mean, it involved an awful lot of people, this downturn, many more than before, because many more were on the Coinbase platform. And so I think they feel, well, I can only guess, that they feel that all of the really serious traders are not going to use this anyway.
Well, Coinbase regular charge more money for trading as opposed to Coinbase Pro, which charges less fee, but they had excellent charts. So the charts were kind of complicated and were meant for more experienced people. But Coinbase regular was for beginners and very easy to use interface, as opposed to Pro. That was kind of complicated, and you really have to know what you're doing when you're using that. But if they are phasing out Pro, that means are they going to merge the regular plain version with the Pro version, and now we'll just have one platform? Or because I kind of like Coinbase Pro, in my opinion, it was much better.
I think that they will merge, and the reason why they're going to merge Pro is because their fees were so cheap, and they make most of their money out of fees. And as the price goes down, they make less money. So Coinbase is bleeding, and ultimately offering better tools to the retail market is probably where they will shine, because the institutional market, as crypto becomes more institutional, will be serviced by institutional investment banks who have custody of the assets of those funds anyway. So it's more, I think that it's more like better tools for the retail rather than, servicing the institutional as much, is what I would guess.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Next up is New York Times says they have sources that the metaverse.
Tyler,
Yes.
before you move on from the Coinbase story, there was a story yesterday very related that Binance is dropping its fees for Bitcoin trading, I believe, and so Coinbase stock got hammered yesterday on that news.
Yeah, we covered that spot trading for Bitcoin, right?
Oh, you did already? Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
So next up here is from New York Times. It says they have sources that the metaverse, not securing elections, is now Mark Zuckerberg's top priority. Meta has about 60 people focused on elections, down from 300 in 2020. Mark Zuckerberg, who once said securing elections was the most important thing, has shifted Meta's focus to the metaverse. Mm-hmm. So hopefully
Was
you're.
was was 300 people a focus within a company the size of Facebook to begin with?
I don't know. I'm not going to pretend to know, and I think it's weird that the New York Times um, feels that this is like something that they want to create narratives like this. The implication that I'm surprised they didn't go so far as to say Mark Zuckerberg doesn't care about elections. About so it's interesting. It's well, first of all, I mean, he said that at the time when election security was an incredibly one of the biggest issues to all Americans, and many, not just Americans, many other countries.
But,
And
but
if
he
I
you
was,
think I know
but he
why.
also said that, Tyler, because he wanted to divert attention for some of the other issues that Facebook has with
okay,
you know,
sure,
bad news, right? But if you
right,
think about the economics, there was never a rationale to make political elections a
yeah,
focus. There's
but
not enough money in it. Yeah, yeah.
let me
I
just
think
point out that when Facebook puts 300 team members on something, these are people, they're programming algorithms to increase safety and security, right? And after spending a year, let's say a year on it, it says 2020, we're in middle of 2022. Call it 2 years. So if you have 300 Facebook engineers working on something for 2 years, do you need to keep engineers on something forever? That's not how code works. The way code works is you build it, you test it, you try to you build the house, you try and knock the house down. If it falls down, you rebuild it. You try and knock it down again until it withstands the ability, of people trying to knock it down, and that it does what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to provide, a function and a security and whatever. Okay, well, at some point, you're going to succeed in building a house that can't be blown down by the big bad wolf. Okay, well, at that point, those 300 people, or some percentage of them, in this case, they give you the numbers. They say now it's only 60 people are still working on that election security team. Right. Well, that's exactly what I would expect. I would expect a team of 300 Facebook engineers work on something for 2 years, and they build this house until it's secure. and they test it thoroughly, and they say, we think we've got this nut cracked. Okay, great. Now you can go on to focus on, let's move 240 of them over to whatever the next big priority project is, which in this case happens to be the metaverse. What exactly?
Tyler, they have the orthodoxy of journalism, right? So if you
To my
have 30
point.
journalists, they have 30 journalists writing, and you have 300 journalists writing, right? They have X amount of output. They're not writing algorithms. They're not building something, right? So
Right.
that's their orthodoxy. That's where they come
Correct.
from,
They're
and that's
not
how they
familiar.
see their articles. Yeah.
Precisely. They're not familiar with the concept of writing software that you then go on, to do other things. They're writing. It's as if Facebook engineers are, more similar to journalists, and if they're not there, then things aren't happening. It's as opposed to, uh, you know, it's just a distorted perspective of how things work.
But I
I have a
have two
comment though,
things,
Tyler.
Tyler.
Tyler,
Tyler,
I have a
two
comment.
things.
I have a comment. I think there's something that Mark Zuckerberg saw and New York Times didn't. Remember recently the South Korean politician who won the election because he campaigned in the metaverse?
Yes.
Yes, maybe Mark Zuckerberg saw that, and maybe the future of election is in the metaverse.
Sure, I think that's a bit over
Just
overly.
teasing. It's just a teaser. No, don't take
And
it too serious.
he was using a doppelganger avatar, not totally metaverse. Yeah.
But I think two things I would say is one is that I think